Hello and welcome to JavaScript projects. Today we will be building a to-do list. To do that, we will need understanding of user inputs, member operators, and methods. On the right-hand side, you can see this is our completed to-do list, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, everything included. We can add our items and we can also cross our items as well. Let's get started. Let's get started understanding user inputs. So for our to-do list, we want users to be able to add items that they've created. And to do that, we need HTML, and we will need to create an input bar and a submit button. So here on the screen right now, this is what the HTML looks like without any JavaScript added to it. So you could always come back to this part of the video and copy it. All you really need is an input bar with the type text so we could get the value. And then you need a button as well so you could do the submission. And then just for styling, so I could see how it looks beforehand, I have two items already placed in. And that's us understanding user input, and that's us preparing to have our user add things into the DOM. Next up, we have understanding member operators and methods. These are things we add onto our object model. So just for some syntax, we have our member operators and the method added onto our object model. Member operators provide access to the property or the method of our object, and methods are used to manipulate our objects in JavaScript. So we have our document, which is the object. The member operator is a dot. Sometimes our member operator could be these quotations right here. So our dot is method, get element by ID, and this is what we're using to manipulate our object in JavaScript. And then after that, we want the value. So some other member operators and methods are dot value, dot onClick, dot create element, and dot append child. And these are some that we will be using in JavaScript to create our to-do list. Let's get started with the JavaScript. Right now, what we want to do is through JavaScript, we want to get a document, and in our document we want to query selector our button, and then once we get the button, we want an on click. We want it to equal a function. We'll be creating this function now. So right now, document.query selector, we have it on our button. On our button, it's an on click. We start our function. Let's create some variable. Let item equal let list item value equal document dot get element by ID, and this is going to be the input. This is going to be the input bar. So input this is what I named it specially. So this is my input bar, and I named it ID input this, and then with that we want the value. So whatever our user types in, that's what we want to get from it. We also want another variable, so let list what do I call this? I have a let list. Okay, I'll just give it a letter. Let list a equal document. So as you can see, our object model is the document, but we're going into the document, our HTML, and we're looking for things, we're retrieving things, and we also want to go into our document, into our HTML, and create things using JavaScript. So right now we have create element, and that element that I want to create is going to be a span. So let me pause here. As you can see, we have our to-do list in a div, and then in the div we have two spans already, and each span is a list item that was typed in by the user. So these are the pre-made ones that I typed into HTML, but it's going to show up exactly like this when we use create element span. Now, as you can see, in our span, it also has an ID. We're gonna do list a dot set attribute, and that set attribute has a different way of taking values. It's going to be the class, comma, and then I'm going to name it list item. Matter of fact, instead of class, I wanted ID, so that way it will match up. And I'll show you this in a bit when we actually have something working, because right now we don't have anything working just yet. So where do we go from here? So to go from here, we want document again dot get element by ID, and we want the entire to-do list. So to-do list items. We don't want individual to-do list items. We want the whole to-do list. And then from there, we're going to append list A. So once again, let's take a break. So right now, we're getting our button for a query selector. Our method is on click, and then we start our function. So every time we click on our button, which is our submit button, we start our function. In our function, we have a value. We have two variables. The variable is so we could get the value that was typed in, and then another variable is so that we can create the span in which the value will be hosted in. Now this, we have our set attribute. We just want to give it a unique ID, because sometimes you can't go in there and query selector all and say span. We want them all to have a unique ID of list item. I keep putting capital. We don't need a capital of list item. And now moving forward, what we want to do is get our entire to-do list item, and we want to append list A, and list A is a created span that's created every time we click on this function. And every time the span is created, we want that to have a, so list A, which is our created span, dot inner HTML, and we want that to equal list item value, and that's a variable we created earlier. So let's just console.log give me a second, that was in the way, list item value. So if we move this to the side and we refresh, let's go to our inspector. So as you can see, we have our input bar, we have our input button, we have two list items that were already pre-made. With this, go to console, we should be able to type in, so let's say juice, add list. All right, here we go. We have it console log, and we also have it added to our to-do list. But as you can see, I'm clicking on them and there is no option to cross them out. Cat food. But as you can see, all our list items are showing up. And now if we also were to look a bit into the HTML, so I'm going to expand this, and then we go to our to-do list items. As you can see, our to-do list items container, our div, covers the entirety of all our list items. But if we were to go in, we see that each new list item has an ID of list item as well. So that way we could gather them all. And then for our next step, where we're going to be adding the ability to cross out, that would be super important. So let me make this big again. And from here, we're going to finish our function. So we want another variable. So let element, this is what I'm going to call it, equal document. So we're going to go into our document again, and this time a query selector all, and we're going to select all our spans. So don't worry, since this is a limited model, we're just going to put the word span for query selector all, because only our list items are spanned on this page. But like I said, I did a set attribute, and I've given them all the special ID list item. So you could also do get element by ID, but I'm just going to do span. So now we have our element, which is a query selector, and for each we want this function to play out. Now this is written a little so function, we give it a name, we give our function a name, switch. Okay, switch off. That seems like a name that was already there. Close out. Close out list item. That's the name of our function. And then we put in parentheses our argument. Our argument name is going to be toggles. But you could name that however you wish to name it. And then we start our function, which is going to be what I named it, toggles dot onClick equals function. It's going to be toggles again dot classless dot toggle without the s. Now this is syntax of JavaScript, and then the unique CSS class that I want to toggle when you click on it is cross out. So just a bit of information for this second part of it. We created a variable. The variable really is just a query selector. We're going to select all our spams, and then for all the spans for each, we want this function that we're naming here closeout list items with our argument toggles. Now we're taking the argument toggles and we're putting it here, and we're having an onClick method to start the function, and then we're just renaming it toggles. And then this is more syntax, classless.toggle, and then we're going to toggle our unique CSS class, which is cross out. So if we go back here, we refresh everything. Let's add some items. So let's say here products. Add to to-do list, and we should be able to click it, and then as you can see, all of them have the ability to be crossed out. So food items. So as you can see, that is it for this project. Let me zoom out so you can see the code and you can see everything side by side. That is our JavaScript project, to-do list item.